Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Let us continue with Surah An-Nisaa bihawlillahi wa quwwatih, ayah number 117. قال الله تعالى إن يدعون من دونه إلا إناثا وإن يدعون إلا شيطانا مريدا. When he says إن يدعون, the in means not. They are not calling upon except inathan, which is females. Min dunihi, meaning besides him, as in besides Allah. So he's talking about the kuffar, how they are worshipping females. How is this? This could be in a few ways. Number one, the names that they give some of the idols are feminine names, like Lat and Uzza and Manat. And also, from the mushrikun are those who say that the angels are the daughters of Allah, and some of the idols are daughters of Allah. So that's, of course, females. And he says that they are only making dua to a shaitan who is marid, rebellious. How are they making dua to shaitan or worshipping shaitan? Because it is shaitan who tempts people to worship the idols. So when you worship the idols, you're actually worshipping shaitan, because you're obeying shaitan in opposition to Allah Jalla wa Ala. Much like how Allah Jalla wa Ala says that the Yahud and Nasara took their priests and their rabbis and their monks as Rabb besides Allah. Now how is this? Because obviously they do not worship their priests and rabbis and monks, but the way they have taken their leaders as Arbab, Rabb besides Allah, is in obedience. Ayah 118, لعنه الله وقال لأتخذن من عبادك نصيبا مفروضا. Allah cursed him, meaning shaitan. And he said, he as in shaitan said, لأتخذن, from ittikhadh, to take, and the noon shadda is for the emphasis of the verb. So I will surely take from your servants, O Allah, nasiban mafrudan, which means a share. Mafrudan is a sifa or an adjective of nasib, which means a necessary or appointed share or inevitable share. The whole of mankind and jinn kind are servants of Allah. As for shaitan taking some servants, it simply means misguiding them and having them worship besides Allah Jalla wa Ala other matters. Also note, when he says in the previous ayah shaitan and marida, this marid, meaning rebellious, is a sifa kashifa. It is a description which just makes plain what the reality is. In other words, every shaitan is rebellious. There's no such thing as a non-rebellious shaitan. Even amongst mankind, there are those amongst the kuffar who are particularly rebellious against the deen of Islam. They will either try to mock it, or they will try to lie against it. They may try to cast the Muslims in a negative light, like you see in much of the media. So you see, their nature is much more rebellious than other types of people. And this is the nature of shaitan, the rebellious nature. So you find shayateen even amongst mankind as well. The hallmark of a shaitan is that they are rebellious. This is the whole idea of shaitan. And if somebody is being rebellious against righteousness, they can be called shaitan as a rebuke. Ayah number 119, وَلَأُضِلَّنَّهُمْ وَلَأُمَنِّيَنَّهُمْ وَلَآمُرَنَّهُمْ فَلَيُبَتِّكُنَّ آذَانَ الْأَنْعَامِ وَلَآمُرَنَّهُمْ فَلَيُغَيِّرُنَّ خَلْقَ اللَّهِ وَمَنْ يَتَّخِذْ الشَّيْطَانَ وَلِيًّا مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ فَقَدْ خَسِرَ خُسْرَانًا مُبِينًا. So this ayah continues with what the shaitan is saying to Allah Jalla wa Ala. وَلَأُضِلَّنَّهُمْ. The lam in the beginning is the lam al-qasam. It's like shaitan saying, Wallahi, I will misguide them. And the noon shadda at the end is for tawqeed. It emphasizes the verb. I will surely misguide them. And he says, وَلَأُمَنِّيَنَّهُمْ. This means to give someone amani, which is the plural of umniya, which means wishful thinking. I will give them wishful thinking. So what does that mean? It will make people believe that there is no hereafter, there is no Jannah or Jahannam, and that you're going to live a long time. You do not need to worship Allah Jalla wa Ala. And what you're doing is absolutely fine. You're on the right path. You're not misguided whatsoever. Just like the kuffar nowadays, if you were to ask them, are you misguided? They will tell you, no, I'm not misguided. I'm doing just fine. I'm a good person. So this is all false hopes that the kuffar have. And their kufr and misguidance is made fair seeming to them. And this is the works of shaitan. And he says, I will surely order them. فَلِيُبَتِّكُنَّ. This is from the verb battaka, yubattiku, tabtikan, which means qata'a, to cut. They will cut the ears of the an'am, of the cattle. They would do this with their camels. They would pierce the ears of what they would call the bahira. This is a female camel whom they would leave to roam around, dedicated for the idols that they would worship, and no one was allowed to ride on this animal. This was like a sacred camel, and no one was allowed to milk this camel. It was a sacred dromedary. And of course this was something they just made up, as well as what they would call the sa'iba, another dromedary they would dedicate for their idols, and no one was allowed to carry any load on this animal. They also had what was called the wasila. This was again a dromedary who gave birth to a female camel, and her second birth was also a female camel. Now, of course, a dromedary, a female camel, is much more valuable because females give birth, males do not. So this dromedary gave birth to two females, one after the other. And because of this, they deemed this dromedary to be a special dromedary, and again they dedicated this dromedary to their idols, and no one was allowed to own it. So what they would do is that they would split the ears of these dromedaries so that they may be known as sacred dromedaries. Of course, Allah Jalla wa Ala did not send down any evidence or permission to make such camels sacred, but this was the nonsense that they would make up from their own selves. He also goes on to say, I will surely order them, and they, meaning people, will surely change the creation of Allah. So what is this all about? Examples have been given in the tafsir, such as tattoos. Tattoos are a permanent change, and you're permanently changing the creation of Allah. It is like vandalizing your skin. And other matters like plastic surgery, for beautification purposes, not for medical purposes to remove a defect. And also changing the fitrah. Nowadays we have people who want to change their gender. They feel they have been born in the wrong body, and they call it gender dysphoria. And this type of nonsense is nothing but the whisper of shaitan, and they're passing it off as some kind of scientific phenomena. And other matters like homosexual marriages, this is also changing the creation of Allah because it is changing the fitrah upon which Allah Jalla wa Ala has created mankind. So these feelings of homosexuality, when people say that they are homosexual or that's what they feel, this is nothing but the whispers of shaitan, such that you can even find married men with children, all of a sudden they feel they are homosexual, and yet they are married to a woman and have children. So this type of nonsense, things which rationally do not make sense, this is the hallmark of the whispers of shaitan. And what is unbelievable is that society now passes all of this rubbish off as a scientific phenomena, as something which is part of nature. It is not part of nature at all. It is nothing more than the wasawis of shaitan. And all you have to say is A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Problem solved. Also from changing the fitrah is the obvious one, which is turning from Iman to Kufr. Remember, every child is born upon Tawheed. So when people start to worship idols and incorporate paganism in their lives, that is also changing the creation of Allah, which is the fitrah. And the ayah goes on to say, whoever takes shaitan as his wali, meaning his ally and his close friend, then he has suffered a great loss. Khusranan is mansub bil-fatha, it is a maf'ulun mutlaq. Ayah 120. يَعِدُهُمْ وَيُمَنِّيهِمْ وَمَا يَعِدُهُمْ الشَّيْطَانُ إِلَّا غُرُورًا. He will promise them. From wa'ada ya'idu, to promise. This is when you inform someone that you will do something positive to them. وَيُمَنِّيهِمْ, again he will give them hopes or wishful thinking. And ash-shaytan only promises them ghurur, which means deception. So as for promising them, then it is basically giving them assurances that their deviant way of life is correct and that they have nothing to worry about. And as for giving them desires and wishful thinking, this is making them desirous of this world, so they chase after the fleeting pleasures of this world. And shaitan can even arouse false hopes in Muslims as well. He could tempt them by saying, oh, this is only a minor sin, it's not really that big. Or he could tempt them by saying that Allah Jalla wa'ala forgives all sins, it's not a big deal. Similar to what he did to Adam alayhi salam, tempting him that Allah only forbade you from this fruit of the tree because it gives you everlasting life, and that is not what Allah intended for you. It's not really a massive sin. So there's no real problem if you eat from the tree. These are some false hopes and desires that the shaitan arouses. And he says that the shaitan's promises are only deception. When he promises you that there is no akhirah, there's no Jannah or Jahannam, this life is the only life there is, and this material world is the only thing, there is no deity or angels and so on. All of these promises of shaitan are deception. Ayah 121. أُولَٰئِكَ مَأْوَاهُمْ جَهَنَّمُ وَلَا يَجِدُونَ عَنْهَا مَحِيصًا. The vocabulary here is fairly straightforward. Ulaika, those people, referring to the kuffar who listen to the shaitan, their ma'wa, their place of refuge or place of shelter. Of course, Jahannam is no place of shelter, but the word is used ironically. So their place of shelter is Jahannam, which is the hellfire, and they will not find from it mahis. This means a mahrab, a place of escape, or a mafar, a place where you flee to, or like a place of asylum. So, picking up on some points of benefit from these last few ayats, we find that making dua is an act of ibadah, because Allah Jalla wa'ala does not use the word ibadah. He uses the word dua. In yad'una. So your dua is your ibadah. Anytime you make dua to someone or something from the unseen, then you're making ibadah of that someone or something. We also learn that obeying shaitan is actually, in essence, worshipping shaitan besides Allah Jalla wa'ala. We learn the shaitan is rebellious, and this is the nature, like we said, of all the shayateen from the ins and jinn. It is the rebellious type. We learn that the shaitan is cursed from Allah Jalla wa'ala, which means being banished from His mercy, as we have mentioned before previously. We also learn about shaitan is that he has strengthened his resolve to misguide as many people as he can. He says he will surely take a fixed portion of the servants of Allah Jalla wa'ala. So if we know that to be the case, and we know that our enemy has strengthened his resolve, then we too must strengthen our resolve to ward off the shaitan's influence in our lives. And from this we see the wisdom of Allah Jalla wa'ala, how He teaches us about our enemy. Because how are you supposed to prepare against your enemy if you do not know anything about him? So from the wisdom of Allah Jalla wa'ala is that He informs us of what the enemy is thinking and his plans, so that we may prepare. Allah Jalla wa'ala is worthy of praise for His wisdom and how He cares for our safety. We also take that anything which is sacred needs a warrant from Allah Jalla wa'ala, and that we cannot declare anything to be sacred. Just like the mushrikun would declare the sa'iba and the wasila and the bahira and the ham to be sacred camels. And you could find many Muslims falling into this mistake as well. They declare things to be sacred based on their own intellect and understanding. This is wrong. You need evidence to declare something to be sacred. We also find that changing the creation of Allah Jalla wa'ala, of which we gave examples before, is from the whispers of shaitan, and there's nothing scientific about it. Question: is shaving the beard from changing the creation of Allah? There are some ulama who have said so. Now, shaving the beard may not be a permanent change because the beard grows back again. But what if somebody continuously shaves the beard so that he's continuously clean shaven? And this clearly would be worse. In any case, it is not permissible for the man to shave the beard, as he would be resembling himself to females. And the Prophet cursed those men who resemble females and those women who resemble males. He said, "Drive such people out of your homes." We also find the dangers of taking the shaitan as your wali. How does one do that? By obeying him in disobedience to Allah Jalla wa Ala. The ultimate form of this would be kufr. However, you can have minor forms of this as well. Whenever someone commits a sin, they have in that particular instance taken shaitan as their wali. Of course, you can rid yourself of this by repentance. We also learn that the assurances that shaitan gives you is all a deception, and therefore we may take that the kuffar are deceived, the lot of them. They all think that they are upon guidance because this is what shaitan has promised them by whispering them and inspiring them to these thoughts, that you're a good person, you have nothing to worry about when you die, or that perhaps this life is all there is, and if there is a God, then you're okay because you've been a good person, you have not harmed anyone, and so you're safe. We also take that the destination of those who take the shaitan as their ally is Jahannam. We also find that it is impossible to escape from Jahannam. Ayah 122. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ سَنُدْخِلُهُمْ جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا أَبَدًا وَعْدَ اللَّهِ حَقًّا وَمَنْ أَصْدَقُ مِنْ اللَّهِ قِيلًا. The vocabulary in this ayah is straightforward. We have come across these words before. When he talks about the anhar, plural of nahar, rivers, flowing tahtiha, under it, it simply means on the ground. Abadan means without end, so it means the life in Jannah is going to be without end. The abadan is mansub al-fatha because it is a dharfu zaman. It tells you of the time frame. It is pertaining to the word khalidina, dwelling therein forever. So a dharf is mansub. He says wa'd Allahi, promise of Allah. The wa'd is mansub bil-fatha. Why should that be the case? It is a maf'ul mutlaq, which emphasizes the verb nudkhiluhum, we will enter them. So this idea of us entering them into Jannah is a promise of Allah. And he says haqqan. It is again mansub bil fatha. Why is that? It translates to in truth, but it is a maf'ul mutlaq. Again, it is a maf'ul which emphasizes the verb which is not stated explicitly, but it would read haqqa dhalika haqqan. That is indeed the truth. He asks the question rhetorically, of course, who is truer than Allah? Qilan, meaning in statement. Qilan is mansub al-fatha because it is a tamyiz. It tells you in which way Allah Jalla wa Ala is the truest. That is to say, in His speech. So reflecting on this ayah, we pick up that merely having iman in your heart is not good enough. You need to back up this iman with righteous actions. Now, righteous actions are part of your iman, but they are given a special mentioning because of their importance and how easy it is for people to miss out on righteous actions. We also learn from this ayah the type of people who will be in Jannah, those who had iman and worked righteousness, even though we cannot testify Jannah for any individual person unless we have evidence. We also learn from this ayah that no one is truer in his speech than Allah Jalla wa Ala. No lie can ever come from Allah, and so therefore His promise is the truest of all promises. And we notice that it is quite fitting that Allah should make mention of His promise after He tells us about the reality of the promise of shaitan, so that we see the stark contrast between truth and falsehood. هذا والله أعلم.